I am Riley Henson. I'm the owner and founder of CRS Horseshoes. We're excited to be on the forefront of development for horses that have lameness problems. This one's a good example of what we're after and how we try to help horses.
Pretty small feet, and that's a characteristic of his breeding. The cow horses are oftentimes have pretty small feet. And the main thing we're going for is comfort for him and performance, all of that stuff, his behavior. This foot's a little upright, it's a little what you'd term as a club foot, and so we're going to be mindful of that when we trim. We had to put a cast on the last couple of times because he had pretty thin hoof wall, and ideally as his foot gets more healthy, we're going to be able to do this without casting. It's a fiberglass cast product, just like you'd get if you go to the doctor and break your arm. Add additional hoof wall and sole thickness. So ideally, this hoof pastern axis is parallel, and visualize this axis that runs through the pastern there. Ideally, we want this line and this line to be parallel. So where it diverges there, the way we're going to handle that is to scoot the shoe back so that his breakover is back here where it should be instead of where it is. This is dental impression material, so we're going to make sure that we have equal sole and frog pressure and support the central part of the foot, and that's so important. The hoof only functions properly through elasticity, so this is one of the main advantages of a central loading shoe like the CRS shoe, is that the frog and sole are loaded equally, and as opposed to the perimeter only being loaded in a steel shoe. After a lot of research with doing things the normal way, that I used Horseshoes and their traditional methods on lame horses for decades, and I was always dissatisfied with the results. What we've learned since we started using these shoes is there's another variable oftentimes in lameness cases, and that's the medial lateral leverage. And so when you have a horse in a perimeter shoe, they're locked into one medial lateral plane, and the truth of it is that horses use a wide variety of medial lateral planes. And so 150 years ago, when we were all riding in straight lines, it didn't make as much difference, but now that we ask horses to go in circles all the time, it makes a huge difference. So we found that we can resolve that medial lateral leverage by using these shoes that are rounded in the medial lateral plane. And as you can see, while this horse turns in a deformable surface or in soft ground, they easily turn and move medial laterally. But when they're in a steel shoe or a perimeter shoe, they have leverage that's in that limb that causes problems. In nature, the hoof deforms and has architecture that takes care of that medial lateral leverage, but when they're in a steel shoe, that those properties are negated. So it seems like about 1/3 of all horses have a deviation, and it's usually a valgus deviation where their feet are outside of their knees. And he's not quite as good a example as some of them because he's pretty straight. He doesn't have quite as much of that valgus deviation as a lot of them do. We put them in these foam blocks, and that way if there's leverage in the limb, then you can see it. It mimics a deformable surface, just like pea gravel or soft ground. Their foot can sink in any direction it wants to, and it equalizes the soft tissue. And so that's what we're trying to do with this shoe. We just mimic a deformable surface. If you look at horses with navicular and ring bone, large percentage of those have that valgus deviation. And so if you can resolve that medial lateral leverage before they're injured, they get a lot of benefit from it.